My name is Barb Cook. I was the inaugural secretary of the Deception Bay Neighbourhood Centre. It was quite a battle to get this building and the philosophy working. How did it come about? Well, prior to Wayne Goss and the Labor government being elected in 1989, many groups within the Bay were providing support to the community. There was no connection between these groups. They were all doing their own little bit. Usually through schools or the Girl Guides or the churches. So through the vision of a few people, Kevin Van Catwhite, myself, Tom McLaughlin, who later was the mayor, Ian and Michelle Burgett. Ian was an industrial advocate for one of the unions, but he's involved with training programs. Ken and Janet Haywood. Ken Haywood was our local member of the state government when Wayne Goss got elected. Later on, Chris Whiting came on the committee and now the member for Bancroft, and we also had the wonderful Trish Ferrier involved with the Neighbourhood Centre. Basically, we came about as a collective primarily because there was lots of bad press about Deception Bay community. It was undesirable to live or to work within this community. There was very little government funding coming into the community, poor servicing of buses, and there was no jobs in the community. There was no industrial estates. So through the group, we thought, okay, what can we do? So how did we do it? First of all, we had a local community meeting near the Deception Bay Primary School. The community meeting voiced our concerns. What have we got here? We seem to be just left in this little pit and ignored by many and talked about. So the only way we can have change is be the change ourselves. Let's do it. So we did. We had this community meeting for our well-being and looking at our disadvantage. We had Dr. Danny Lean participating as well, because he could also see the impacts to the health within the community. Arthur Hayes, he was also involved. He was Mr. Fix-It Man for everything around the area, hence the community hall. We created a sense of bonding within this group. We needed to change the perception and give hope to the very youthful population which we had at the time, and to our most vulnerable. We are particularly good at looking after each other in this community. We are different because we have had such rubbish thrown at us for many, many years. We have had to have the ability to look after each other. We're not in each other's pockets, but we just care for each other. We looked at how our existing neighbourhood centres are operating. So our little committee, we went off and had a look at sandbags down at Sandgate. Then we went up to Caboolture, how it's been run, and they all operate differently. And the reason for that is because it reflects what the community wants and needs. No neighbourhood centre will ever be the same because it depends what the community wants. We had good support from Anne Warner and the Department of Housing. The Department of Housing actually gave us a building at Ansell Avenue to be starting our neighbourhood centre. So we started off in there, but we had to get staff for it. We had volunteers, us, so we did that. So we went and advertised for community development worker. We put together a proposal of what we saw and community development worker will be doing. Tom McLaughlin, myself and Marie Russon, who was, I think she was Vice President at the time, we sat down at Ansell Avenue, a sun-baked day, when the suns were coming in, and we're looking at all the various applications, and we were saying, hey, what do you reckon about this person? This person's got da-da-da-da, and someone said, nah, too much of a toff. Nah, wouldn't understand what we want here, or, oh, that sounds pretty good, let's put it here. That's how we worked through it. So Karen was our very first community development worker, and she reported to our committee. We had to be very much a hands-on committee. because we wanted it feeling and maintained and owned by the community. We had monthly liaison meetings with all community groups and churches to become cohesive, as many programs often helped the same. There was a lot of overlap, a lot of duplication. So we thought, let's make it easier so the most vulnerable didn't have to repeat their story. Let's support them. Let's build them. And we soon learnt that the most important part was we needed family support workers. We needed budgetary help. We did have access to emergency housing, and we had a women's shelter here in the Bay. We also were linked to Arcady House at Morayfield, which was a youth shelter. But there was a change in direction within the Department of Housing, where we lost all those houses. Can you imagine what we would do today if we had access to emergency housing? Anyway, so we lost that. So our purpose, we needed to work out, okay, what are we going to be doing? So family support, budgeting support, and what programs we could run. We looked at job search training, preparing especially women returning to the workforce, and with the disadvantaged youth under 20. Those youth who needed access to understanding, compassion, and people who can build them up. And we used local trainers and local support people and mentors. We had volunteers. We advertised for volunteers. Most of it was led by Marie and myself. We looked at engaging and expanding our services. Our committee was very much hands-on. They listened, they lived and breathed the community, which is so important. We just don't like the outsiders telling us what to do, and it's important that the committee was a reflection of our community. The building, as everybody knows, has been a source of bone of contention for many, many years. We had many discussions about the housing, the land, and the design with the Department of Housing. We always had a vision. Our vision was a little bit more than what was available at the time. We were told virtually where the land will be. We were told how the design will work, because to the department they felt a neighbourhood centre was just basically a house with a bigger meeting room. Okay? They really didn't understand the concept, how we build community capacity and involvement by having multi-spaces, multi-purpose rooms and all that sort of stuff. And an outside area, which we are very limited here. So it depended on the department funding and desire to help us out with that. Our political masters and willpower to engage and support became important. We had to, I suppose, we're one of the earlier lobbyists involved in trying to get improvements to it all. Tom McLaughlin was a great asset because he was known. He was with the Caboolture Shire Council. However, you know, the housing did a great job. And they had, I can't remember what it's called, but you know, with the amount of social housing within this community, many of them had been allowed to run down and become very basic by the previous government. So let's build community morale by renovating and doing up these houses and so forth. So they did a great job. We networked with them as well. They had a house on Bailey Road, so we did all that. So we were wanting to build capacity and resilience within the community, and that program that Department of Housing ran was great. It networked with us as well. The Neighbourhood Centre, we auspiced the 60 and Better program, which is still running at the PCYC. For people of the older years, becoming motivated and engaged with their community. We auspiced the community youth programs, and we employed Savish, who was quite different, but he was very much an advocate for the youth of this community. We got the first skate ball down there. So that is awesome when you're trying to convince people within councils, this is what we want. And it was not part of their vision, but we got it. programs to the Bay that was funded and supported, like job search training, domestic violence resource centre was set up at Caboolture, which we were involved in as well. They always wanted to feel safe, and we made sure that they would be feeling safe. There was other challenges as well. We first learned about predatory non-government organisations, our first encounters. Competition for funding was interesting. Job training. The Bay missed out on funding. A Redcliffe organisation got it with plans to use a bus. The feedback was it was imposed, not welcoming, and the bus was very empty. Assistance groups came in and chose to work beside and respect Bay views. We had the First Nations people here involved as well, some of the elders. And we had the Samoan group, Hanneman Hunt. Okay. Oh, what an awesome group that is for the Bay. And there's a lot of Kiwis associated with the Bay as well. We're part of that. The role of the Neighbourhood Centre in the community, basically we are people's space. We hold their space. It's not about creating a job for people. It's not creating dependence of the community on these organisations, because that was one of the biggest fears that we learnt from other organisations, well, that people will always expect to have help from within the organisation. They really haven't learnt or been assisted to budget or to negotiate power bills and stuff like that. However, we gave them the skills to be able to do that for themselves by the people we employed here, the people who were in the front office, the way they approached the people. We made sure that we had people who could do all that and more for our community. There was never any of this starting late because I've got things to do for myself. It was always what the community needed first. It was multicultural. We had community capacity and building and meeting space, interest groups, like our community garden group, which I'm associated with, those with spectrum disorders, Indigenous and multicultural groups. It's mutual respect for each other, safety and a haven, as some people will call it, and it's a resource for information and support, like our recent addition for the RSPCA for vet checks. Their fur babies are important to them too, so we've got to understand and support them. We had income earning projects like training courses, classes like first aid, antenatal classes. We had that all running here. We had emergency relief funds, and it was not about keeping the dollars from the community when we got funding. It was making sure that we spent it wisely and frugally, meeting the needs of the community. Our neighbourhood centre is important, valuable and special for absolutely everything within this bay.